Great. So what I would like to do today and the next lecture is essentially give you some more ingredients to build these Android apps. We have some interesting experiments, actually. No, sorry. So yeah. And actually, you know, one of the things I would like to do while I'm at UCSC and I've never done is take some classes by other some fun departments. I'm not sure how it works, whether I could officially attend them, but I guess so. They must be doing some interesting physics experience. Um, so I want to do two things. I want to give you, no, three things in these two lectures. So I want to give you some information on dialogues and menus. Okay, how to build them and how to get input via those. It's really quite convenient to use them. I want to talk next time about preferences, user preferences, because it's they can be leveraged in order to not only store your data, but enable you to change it quite easily. I think you have seen in many apps, for example, Gmail or Google Plus, these preference screens that enable you to set values, change, select among multiple choices, and even enter values, okay, that you may want to enter. For example, I don't know, your username or your nickname or this kind of things. So I want to show you how to do that, okay? And I also want to go on building this app that talks to the web server, exchanging data, okay? So these are the various things, essentially building blocks in order to build the application a little bit more. And the week after, I'm still a little bit undecided about what to do. So if you want to ask me questions or steer me in a particular direction, that's a good time. Eventually, I will need to tell you how to design your own views. So these are views in which you can really position the elements in the way you want and draw on the screen. Not draw on the screen in the sense of doing animation in real time, but at least position elements in the way you want. That is one of the topics that is going in through my mind. The other topic is to start talking about sensors. So I'm a little bit undecided between these two. Anybody has preferences? I mean, who prefers sensors, raise your hand. One is sensors, and the other one is custom views. An example of a custom view is a view in which, I don't know, you have a rotating compass, for example, to show the directions, or in which you animate and really design, not only assembling predefined views, but you really design the graphics in the way you want. Graphics, raise your hand. Sensors, raise your hand. Okay, so it's about equal. So I will do what I feel I will be doing, which I would have done anyways, but at least now you know. Okay, so I want to start with a little bit about menus and dialogues, and then I want to use them. Sorry, I need to be here. So I just want to go quickly through some slides, and then I will go through. Yes?
Just want to make sure it's the Wi-Fi router working. None of my tablet can't connect to it.
I think it should be working, but the point is that this is a $50 device I have, okay? And the campus is scheduled to install a better Wi-Fi, but if I want to have it installed now, they want $1,000 out of my own money, which, I don't know. I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I'm sorry about it. Maybe I should bring a faster one, or if anybody of you wants to research which one is a better model, I can buy another $50 one, which is better. But so let me first say something about menus. So the problem is that these slides are old, and I always want to say things in a different order than the one I've told you some time ago. So let me Okay, fine. I try to be good and use the slides in the order they are. So there are various types of menus, and I will focus generally on how to use the menu button. The other type of menus are fairly simple. So the options menu is the one that is accessed via the menu button once upon a time when you had it. Okay, and I want to teach you how to use it and how to call up menus in that way. Then there is contextual menus via long click. I will not cover them in much depth, but they are not difficult to use. Pop-up menus anchored to a view, and I probably don't talk very much about them. Okay, so if you want to define an options menu, you typically define it via XML elements. You also can add elements programmatically to a menu, but the most common way is to define into your resource folder some XML piece that essentially tells you what the entries of the menu are. Okay, so it has a menu container, and inside the menu there are multiple items. Each item has an ID, an icon. That is usually not shown in newer Androids, okay, but is used to be shown in the older Androids. It has a title, which is essentially a string that you can put into it. And it has some options, such as show as action is if room. This is because Android went through a big change from version 4 and beyond, or maybe 3 and beyond, but there were a few devices that ran Android 3. And prior to version 3 or 4, okay? Prior to version 3 or 4, the dialog looks like, when you click on the dialog, you get this list of items that you can click on when you click on the menu button, okay? So you have essentially access to a list of items, and you cannot do very much customization of those, okay? After version 4, if you choose a layout that enables the action bar, some of the items get in the action bar, and some are only accessible if you hit the menu button next, okay? So the action bar typically looks like these at the top. You can put items here if they fit, and the overflow ones are accessible via a button on the side, okay? And so when I say this Android show as action if room, this means that this first item, if there is room enough, it will go in the action bar, okay? And it's your choice whether to use the action bar, and this depends on the layout you are using. Okay? So this is how it's generally done. You can have submenus as well, okay? And if you have a submenu, if it's on the top of the action bar, then it will drop out a submenu, and otherwise it will present it in some overlay that is a bit device dependent, okay? So this is how an action bar looks like, and here is how a menu looks like in one of the old Androids. Okay. You create the option menu. You notice that when you create an activity, you always have this sort of piece of code that creates an option menu when somebody hits the menu icon on the screen, okay? So this is one of these methods that you need to override, and you need to get an inflator and inflate the menu, where this r.menu.game menu is a reference to the XML file we defined before. So this piece of code here defines a menu from XML. And otherwise, you can also use add or find item to use methods to add items to a menu manually, which is something I've done every now and then, and it's useful. Yes?
When we were talking on the previous screen about the ... and more, are those functionally equivalent? Like, do you get the more for free using the if room parameter?
So this ... is for overflow items that do not fit on top. And now there is a complicated logic which I slightly forgot but is documented that chooses what goes on top and what does not go on top. Okay, so if you say if you use that if room parameter that I showed to you, the choice is put on top if there is room for it, and otherwise it goes into the overflow. Okay, and it's your choice whether to have anything that goes on top or not. For example, sometimes I prefer not to put things on top. because I want here to have just the app name and the icon of the app, and I want all choices due to the menu to appear only behind the three buttons, just because I want a cleaner action bar. Okay, but this is your choice, so this is something you can configure.
Right, but the more button is essentially the same, like on the old style is what I'm asking about.
Yeah, the old button is the same. Okay, and so yeah, it's the same. And so one thing is to inflate the button, the menu, and show it to people. The other thing is to handle the click events. Okay, and so to handle the click events, you do you override on option items selected. Okay, and you are passed the item on which the click happened. So what you need to do is you need to figure out which item people clicked, and then you need to take an action. Okay, so if you define the item via XML, the easiest way to do this is to get to the item ID. Okay, because in each XML stanza for each item contained an item ID, and so you can use that in order to figure out what people touched with the finger, right? So you do a switch based on the item get item ID, and case r.id.newGame, you do whatever you want. Case.r.id.help, you do whatever you want. And then as default, it's good to return to super on option items selected, so that if you have some default choice like a back button or any other behavior, you use that. Okay. And I forgot here to include the sample code that I have to take from one app I wrote at one point that ensures that if you touch the icon of your app on the top bar, this sends you to the back, mimics the back button. Okay, which is the behavior you normally want. I forgot. There is an option for doing that, okay, and I forgot to give you in this example. I'll add it next time. Okay, you can also create an options menu programmatically. Okay, so you can override the on-prepare options menu. Okay, and you can clear it at the beginning. Then you can add items that are just strings. Okay, and you can also add a submenu into it. So if you put a submenu, the typical behavior is that you get a list of items. One of these items will be the title of the submenu. And when you click on the submenu and when you touch it, this will slide out and you will have the submenu slide in, right? So that you can click on the, touch the submenu with your finger and select an item from the submenu instead. Okay? And as far as I know, there are only two levels. There are either the top level menu or one level of submenus. I'm not entirely sure because these things change, but last time I checked, you only had one level of submenus. Okay, handling click events. You can, in case you create the menu in a programmatic way, it's I have personally found not so easy to use the item ID to detect where we have clicked, because you see there is no item ID that is obvious how to get into this from this API, no? Because you do menu.add and you give it the string you want to add actually. So the item ID is generated, but you don't know it directly. And what I've found to be quite easy to do, however, is instead of using the ID, you do selected item dot get title, and so you get the string and you compare the string. Okay, so here I'm getting the string that I used as title 1, and I'm comparing with the item 1. Okay, I mean I compare what you clicked with the string I used for item 1, and if so, then I process the click on item 1, and so on and so forth. So if you do menus programmatically, that's how I do it. Okay. Now, this is a main discussion that really should have come first if I had organized the slides well. So, where did the menu button go? Okay, so essentially you have four things that might happen to you in Android. Okay, you use a very old Android and it has a good old menu button, then you're great. You're in great shape. It was one of the best things of Android that there was always a menu button available when you needed it, and that was great. Now, for a while, then they introduced the action bar, and you could either have it or hide it. Okay, and those are the two new styles. And people then, got really annoyed with this. Actually, developers got mad at this decision essentially by Google to have the action bar. I'm telling you my belief, okay? This is just my belief. But the fact is that on a screen, you don't have a lot of real estate. And the fact that in order to have a menu, you have to waste the top of the screen for an action bar is something that not many welcome necessarily, okay? It's great if your action bar is needed all the time. And by the way, this action bar, just in my personal opinion, is placed exactly wrong. It should be at the bottom, not at the top, because my thumb is at the bottom, unless I hold the phone like this, I guess, no? But, where is, I can hit here easily, not there, right? So the placement of the action bar is awkward, and it takes a lot of real estate on the screen. Especially if you turn the phone, then the action bar slices a non-negligible percentage of the area, and already you are height limited in this setup, okay? So what are the strategies to cope with it? One of the strategies is this. It's a sort of fallback, but if you define your target SDK as version 11, what happens is that at the bottom of the screen, you have the go back button, the home button, the choice of application button, and sneaked in on the complete right, you will have the 3 vertical dots of the good old menu button, okay, that is given back to you. So this is something that you notice in quite a few applications. The applications that don't want to waste real estate on the screen, need the menu infrequently and want to have it, often use this trick of defining the target as version 11, because that will give you essentially a free menu button at the bottom. It's kind of ugly, it's smallish looking all to the right. The bar is not centered along the other buttons in a very nice way, but there you have it without wasting screen. Okay, so this is one possible solution. Another solution is the following. One of the things that I don't like, and many people don't like about these menus, is the following. I think it's a design choice, and I cannot advise you on what is really the right human phone interaction. But the choice was made in menus to have this very uniform style. Essentially, a menu is a list of strings. You will have an incredible headache if you want to get anything else out of it, right? So if you want to have icons or colors or anything else that is not a plain vanilla menu, it's essentially impossible to get. So many people say, well, too bad. Let me do it my own, okay? And we'll go into it more today, but essentially nothing prevents you from not using any menu button that comes standard, but you make your own menu button, okay? You make your own button that looks in the way you most like, and when you click on it, you can bring up exactly whatever you ever imagine and you ever want, okay? So for example, I don't know how many of you use Waze, this navigation app, but at the bottom of the screen, it has 2 buttons, one to essentially as a menu, to choose where to navigate to and do things like that. And on the other side, there is a button to mark road hazards, right? And those are, Waze is not using any predefined menu, and they came up with their own, okay? And you see this a lot, okay? So I think, in fact, I see more apps that don't use the classical action bar but make up their own buttons than apps that instead, you follow the design guideline and use the action bar. That's just my impression, okay? There is also a big advantage in rolling your own, and that is that you get a UI that is perfectly consistent across all devices, okay? If you have to rely on the action bar, is great, but then people with old phones, it's true that now old phones are becoming, less common, but they would have a different UI. And it's sometimes difficult to I mean, you don't want to have too many different looking versions of your application, right? The more uniform it is, the better it is. So often the best choice is to just make your own. Okay. Another thing that instead it works really quite well, and I want to show you is how to make dialogues. But dialogues, I actually have something better than these slides to show you. I have some code that I wrote here, and I want to then use today. Okay, so let me first tell you what dialogues are. Imagine you want to build a little bit of UI that pops up in order to either be able to pick an item in a multiple choice, or maybe pick a date, or maybe enter a string. Okay? There are two general choices for doing this. Actually, there are three general choices. And I don't have a slide that gives you the choices, so you have to listen. Okay? The simplest one is to do a dialogue. A dialogue is, I think you have seen them. For example, in a multiple choice dialogue, what they pop up is this very standard screen that always looks like this. It has the checkboxes with the strings, okay, as many as you want, okay, and below it has at most 3 buttons. You can define how many. You can have a minimum of 1. Actually, I've never tried, but maybe you can even do, no, I think with 0 would be silly because you wouldn't know how to confirm. So you at least need a positive button that typically says something like OK. But you can have 2 other buttons, the negative button that is usually cancel, and you can have a neutral button that sometimes that you can have it do whatever you want. For example, you could use it to select all. It's free to you what to do with it. Okay? So you have at most 3 buttons, and you have a list of multiple choices. Okay? What you put here, you can decide a little bit. Okay? You can also put some text input over here. I never tried to put very complicated things, but it might be possible for all I know, because you can set a view that you put into the dialogue. So you might be able to even put, your own icons and animations. Okay, but for example, multiple choice is a very common one. Otherwise, you can have a dialogue in which you just click an item and it selects the item you clicked without any confirmation button. If you have a multiple choice, you need a confirmation button because otherwise you don't know when you're done selecting it, right? But if you just do these, you can have a date and time picker. They don't look very nice actually, but you have them. Most apps try to do fancier ones, and I'm wondering, when Android will finally come up in the framework with a bit of a better time picker. It's incredible. Even the Android alarm clock app doesn't use the Android standard date and time picker because it would be too awkward. So it's kind of strange. Okay, but so these are the dialogues, and they're one choice. Another choice that actually works pretty well is to say, well, perhaps I don't really need to have my UI pop up on top of the previous one. Perhaps I can afford switching screen entirely. So another choice is that if you need user input, you go to your own activity. Okay, that choice has some advantages. A dialogue like this is very constrained. You cannot really choose colors, right? You give it a set of strings that are displayed in the multiple choice, or they're displayed here, but it's pretty fixed. Otherwise, if you want to be fancy, you're sort of fighting the system. If instead you do your own activity, you can lay it out just as any other activity. You can do a relative layout. You can put things where you want them to be. You can be as fancy as you want. The only thing is that you're really switching to a different screen. Okay, so that's the other extreme. I've done it sometimes, and what I like about it is how cleanly you can design it. Because since you design it from scratch, you can really get it to do whatever you want. Okay? Then there is a sort of intermediate thing that you can do. The intermediate thing is this. You know that when you create an activity in the manifest, you have to choose the layout. Okay? There is this layout that, for example, says HoloLight with action bar or whatever it is, right? One of those layout choices says activity styled as a dialogue. Okay? what you get in that case is an activity which you design as if it was a completely independent activity. In fact, you write it as if it is an independent activity, but that when you have your phone, it pops up on top of the phone as an overlay rather than switching to another screen. Okay? So these are the three choices. I repeated there, normal dialogue, separate activity, and activity styled as a dialogue. I think one of the deciding factors is this. If you want to do something quick to just pick a choice, a dialogue is incredibly convenient from the point of view of code because you need a very small amount of code, right? You don't need to define an activity layout, you don't need to define on create, on resume, on stop, on this, on that. No, none of that is needed. You just define one of these dialogues. You know, it's much faster, much shorter, okay? Instead, in the other two choices, activity styled as dialogue and real activity are more complicated, right? Because you are really in another activity. So also, for instance, passing the result back requires you to either attach it to the returning value of an intent, or else using this singleton object, a singleton class, as I taught you to share data between different activities, right? So passing the data back and forth is slightly more complicated. It's obviously easier to do it if you are in the same activity, okay? So let me give you a few examples of dialogues. And I also want to tell you, these are the simple dialogues. Officially, you could also use dialogue fragments. I'm not teaching you how to use dialogue fragments. It might be a mistake, and maybe I should be teaching you dialogue fragments. So the point is that I tried to use them 2 years ago, and I ended up in one of these terrible problems in which 3 of my days went down the drain. Because what happened was this. I started using these dialogue fragments, okay? So first of all, you write 3 times the amount of code, but fine. At the end, you know, there are all these examples, and you get them to work. Except that they don't work on the old phones, because fragments are not supported on old phones. But then there is a compatibility library. So then I started to use the compatibility library on the old phones in order to get the new fragments work also on the old phones, okay? And then I got into some strange bug in which some other thing I was using was not supported in the compatibility library. And I went in loops for 3 days trying to get a version that would work both on the very new and on the very old phones. And after this, I threw everything away and I wrote a simple code that I'm now giving to you. So the advantage of activity fragments is that they could be reused, so that if you want to compose, if you wanted to write a single body of code that on a tablet display, you know, asks you, for example, for a date and the time picker at the same time, but on a phone it just showed you one of them at a time, or if you wanted to do sophisticated things like that, fragments would give you a level of reuse, okay? But okay, and this is again personal. To me, I don't know. I never quite. The point is that if I want to do it custom, I might as well at some point write my own activity so that I can really customize everything I want in the way I want. So this intermediate level that gives me complication but not with enough flexibility, I never found it incredibly appealing. And this is again, you know, my personal take on it. So let me tell you now how to do these menus with multiple choice and with these dialogues with multiple choice and dialogues in which you pick an activity, you pick a choice by just touching it. And the third example that I want to do is a dialogue that says enter your name, then it gives you a place where you can actually enter it, and below it says OK. Okay, so these are the 3 types of things that I want to show you how to do. So first, multiple selections. So all these dialogues are objects of a class that is called alert dialog. And in order to produce such an alert dialog, you need to get a builder for such a dialog. Okay, so you define a new builder object, okay, and you pass into it these, where this is, of course, this code belongs to an activity, so you pass to it the activity where we want to build this dialog, okay? Then you set a title, the title is, you know, the string that is on top. I forgot to indicate it, I guess, but there is always a title here. In this case, the title is name, right? So that's the title. So you give it a title, and in the case of the multiple choice, by the way, there are different. These are not the only types of dialogues. There is also a single choice. Okay, so there is also one in which you can only check one of these boxes. I don't think it's so important because if you check only one of these boxes, it might be just easier to touch an element of a list. Okay, but what I want to say is that this is a sort of sample. There are various other dialogue types, but these are the most useful in my opinion. So you need to store yourself. So the annoying thing is this. You would hope that in a multiple choice dialogue, you would hope that the framework kept the track for you of what is checked and what is not, and then told you, right? I mean, that's what I would wish. That's not the case. You need to keep track of what has been checked and what has not been checked. Okay? The advantage of this is that if you need flexibility, if you need something to happen, for example, if you want to play a sound when people touch a choice, you can customize it because it's really you who are responsible for reacting to the finger touches. Okay? But the annoying part is that you need a little bit more code. So we keep this final boolean checked, which is an array of booleans, and they say get checked array just because you usually get it from somewhere, right? I mean, you need to, for example, read your own preferences or otherwise come up with what is initial state, right? So that's why I wrote this get checked array. Then you say builder set multiple choice items in which you give it items checked, and then this touch listener. Okay, what is items? I think I may have it in another. Yeah, it's just a string array. Sorry, I forgot to declare it. So, but string items is equal to new. Well, I don't know. Whatever, no? I mean, you need to put some strings. Okay. So you give it to the items, so the strings that need to be shown. You give it to the checked array, which is this Boolean array that stores whether things have been checked or not. And this is the multiple choice click listener. And the typical function does the following. Sorry that here it's sort of... maybe this is more readable. Is it better? Yeah. So when somebody clicks, you have passed the dialog on which they click, which is useful if you had multiple, but you typically have one. You have the integer which tells you, which position was clicked, and you have a boolean is checked that tells you whether it's the new state is supposed to be checked or unchecked. And what you say is you say checked which is equal to is checked. So you essentially copy this checked information into your Boolean array, because otherwise you won't be told that when people press OK what the new state of the choices is, right? So then, as I tell you, you have at most 3 buttons. In this case, I'm using 2. There is the positive button, the negative button, and the neutral button. These are the names. And you don't need to specify where they are. Android knows whether the positive button should be left or right. They change the standard in between versions of Android. But every version follows its own standard of where the OK and cancel are. Okay? So you set the negative button to a non-click listener. For example, this is just my choice. Okay? But when people say click my negative button, here I say that everything is unchecked. Okay? And I set selected. So first I update my own array. And then I call this set selected method that actually tells the dialog to reflect my choice into what is displayed in the UI. Okay, so this would be essentially a clear button. In fact, dialog clear selection was a string that I used as a name for the button. Okay, so this is a way to clear it. Now, when people say OK, so these I called it dialog button OK, the string that refers to it, what you do is this, you have this array checked and you need to figure out what to do with it. So here I just say set selected checked, but in truth, you know, the set selected takes your choices and needs to be able to do something with it. So these two buttons will these buttons dismiss the dialog. So you need to essentially, I made a mistake. Set selected does not actually select it in the UI. It was my mistake. Set selected is the way in which you actually use the result of the dialog. Okay? Because these buttons at the bottom will dismiss the dialog, and so you need to decide what to do with the dialog output. Okay? So that's the way to do a multiple choice. If you just want to select among multiple possibilities, it's of course simpler. Okay, so again you get a dialog builder. You set the title, you set the various choices that you want displayed in it. Okay, so I mean you define your items and then you simply say builder set items, and you give it the items and then a click listener that will decide what to do when you press each item. These actions are completely arbitrary. So not only you can choose something, but you can really design your code to react to a string. For example, you can have, what do you want to do? One is play the game again. The other is give feedback, and the other one is exit. No? And then you can decide what to do. When somebody calls exit, you can say finish, so that you finish your activity. When somebody plays the game again, you throw them into the screen where the game starts again, and you do what you want, right? So you really can design your own. Here you can put any arbitrary code, obviously. Okay. So notice that this builder has many methods. One is set items. One here is set multi-choice items. So if you want to figure out all the different types of dialogues you can build, you can go and read the documentation for a builder, and that will tell you all the methods that the builder gives you in order to build the different types of dialogues. Okay, that's how it works. The last type of dialogue, which is pretty useful, is a dialogue for entering information. Okay, what you do is this. Okay, here they call it alert, I call it builder. Maybe I should just rename it. Okay, it's just because this code comes from a different place, comes from Android snippets, which is one of these resources for pieces of Android. So what you do is that you set the title, you set the message that you want to display, and then you do the following: you get you create an edit text view, okay, and you set this view into the builder. Okay, an edit text, if you remember, is this view in which you can type. Okay, and so you're setting it here. And if you need, for example, a dialog to enter a password, you will see that edit text has many options that you can set, right? Edit text in general has many types of predefined text, and it's really worth choosing the right one. For example, there is the starts with capital, every word starts with capital, password, numerical, in which case it just gives you the digits, etc., etc. So you can choose what you want, okay? Then again, you can set the positive and negative buttons. So these positive and negative buttons will dismiss the dialog, and so immediately upon press, you can decide what to do. Okay, so here if they say okay, you get the value and you do something with it, and if they say press on cancel instead, you simply I don't know, do whatever, or you don't do anything. Okay, so this is a way to build these dialogues. Okay. Great. Let's build. Let's use some of these dialogues in some example. What is a typical thing that we may want to do? We do the following. We have an app that wants you to create an account. okay? And we want to create an account for you in the simplest possible way, kind of unlike Snapchat, I guess, does similar to this. So you open your app, and if you don't have a username yet, we will prompt you for a username. Then I'll check that it's unique on the server. If it's not unique, I'll have to ask you again for a username. If it's unique, I just store it and I'm done with it. And at that point, people will be able to message to you or refer to you via your nickname if you tell them what your nickname is, obviously. Okay? Does this sound like an interesting example? So let's try to do it. As an example of server-client communication. So here we had, sorry, I start to lose track of how many tabs I have open here. This is just slow. It will get unblocked soon. Hopefully. Is there any question? I just want to close everything so that I... Oh yeah, which one was the one we were building? Which one was it? Doing background download, the one in which we built this code for the communicating with the server. I guess so. Let me check a moment. No, we had a better version of these. How did we call it? Sorry, I have a blank. Does anybody remember? We did it in one of the last classes. We had this specification that we were sending to the downloader so that we could decide what to do afterwards, right? Where was that? Do you remember the name of the app? Classmeet. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Classmeet. Yeah, it was this app in which we wanted to enable people to meet, right? So what I wanted to have in this app is this, that we have this server connect activity in which we can take a specification that lets us decide what to do afterwards. Okay, so this was the important part that I want to reuse. So I want to take this app. Let me make a copy just to be sure. So I don't know, class chat. Okay, just sort of we can do something similar to Snapchat. So what I want to do is this now. We will look at the server communication later, but here is where we initialize a random ID, and I think that's still a good idea, okay? And now I want not only to initialize a random ID, but to prompt you for your username, and then check for uniqueness. So let's see how to do that so that we at least complete one trip of server communication. So I want to define here my preference name, okay? Preference my ID, and then I do private static final string preference username and the string I'm putting here is completely arbitrary, right? It's just that these preferences are going to be stored on the Flash file system as a as a name value pair, and so I'm just deciding the tag. But this is never presented to the user, that name that I use for the tag, right? I just call it username for me. So this is fine. And then here I already take the preferences. So then I do, well, okay, fine. I can define it private username, string username. Okay, so I define the string there so that I have it always available. Why not? And then I can say username is equal to settings get string, get string of preferences username and the empty string. Oops, sorry. Okay. So and again, I don't want this to be empty. So if username equals this. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I should have said null. I don't know, but it's the same. So okay, so this actually is a silly idea of mine. Okay, I can't quite do it here. Let me tell you why. This is the onCreate method. The onResume method hasn't happened yet, right? So I'm not sure at this point that there is a UI ready to receive the dialog. So this is a silly idea to do it here. I can't do it here. I mean, it may work for depending on the speed of your phone or whatever else, but in general, it's a bad idea. Okay. So I'm sorry. I need to copy these and put it into the onResume method. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure what will happen. Do we have an onResume method even? Maybe we don't. No, we may not. It's okay. We probably never needed it before. So override, what is a protected void on resume, then a super on resume. Okay, and then I have this. I need to get again my shared preferences, and then I need to copy this there. Okay, so sorry, it's indentation. Okay, so and by the way, this is a quick way for asking people for a username. It's not probably what I would do in a great app. Okay, so in a great app, you want to make the best impression on a user. Because this is really the welcoming screen. It's your opportunity to tell the user what your app is about, and give some suggestion about what kind of username they should be choosing. Okay, so let me take a break from the code a moment and tell you this. You have again 3 choices for doing this. You have a dialog, which I think in the context of an app that you want people to love would not be my choice. Another choice would be to send the user to another activity. Okay, where you can put the nice graphics and do whatever you want and prompt people for the username. Okay, in this case, since this thing is so incredibly important, I would actually be even a little bit more paranoid, and I would use a solution that is slightly different from what I typically do in all the other cases. So you see that in the onCreate method, I set the content view to this r.layout.activityMain, right? Now, usually people don't do this, but there is nothing that prevents you from having 2 layouts and setting the one you want. So, since this is so important, I think that here I would have another layout that says essentially create username layout, and here I would say that I set the activity layout to that particular layout, and that layout would have a space where to enter the username and the button. It would just work like the normal one. And when people complete that, I would switch to the other layout. Why would I do this rather than switching to another activity? Just to avoid this milliseconds visual switch that when you open your app, instead of staying where you are, it switches you to another place. I think that the first impression you give of an app is so important that I would actually optimize it that way, okay? So this is advice I give you, but it's not what I'm going to do now for the code, just because I want to give you a simple example of a dialogue and of the server communication, okay? So let me carry on using the not so pretty current solution. So for the not so pretty current solution, we do the following. So we need to, we ask the user for a username, and we check that it is unique. Okay, so I take some of this code. Okay, I take essentially all of this code. I will need it all. Okay, and I put it there. I put it here. And just let me check that it's properly formatted. You know that you have all these helpers in to format text in Eclipse, by the way, no? This is meta-I or whatever. So we need to import some classes. This will get rid of most warnings, okay? Builder set title, title. Okay, let me be lazy so because we don't want to waste time. But for example, create your username, okay? No, maybe not, because I have two of them. So I can say, for example, welcome, and create your username. Create your username, or choose your username. Okay, so we will have this edit text input, okay, and when the person says, okay, we need to do something with the value, okay, and so this is a difficult portion of it. Why does it complain? Okay, yes. The example was wrong from where I copied, so we needed to string, okay? So, and now we need to do something with value. So here comes the complication. What is that we want to do with value? And the fact that, so we need to do this. We need to create an async task, okay, specifying somehow the URL we want to call and the parameters, okay? We want to execute this async task, and we want that when the answers come back from the server, we are, you know, this checks for uniqueness. So when you press OK, we want to contact the server. When the answers come back, if it's unique, we want to store it in the settings. If it's not unique, what are we going to do? I'm asking you a suggestion. We can do whatever we want. If we have to bring up this dialogue again, I just need to put it in a better place than in a non-resume. You know, I need to make its own function essentially, so that I can call it from another place as well. I should really do this. In fact, I should call this whole thing here. Let me do it. This whole thing here should go into a private void set username. Okay, and the code should go there. So it's more reusable. And here I say simply set username. Okay, so this makes it a little bit better. So what should I do? Suppose you enter Luca, there is another Luca. What should the message be? What should the behavior be? I think that a reasonable behavior would be this, that it shows you another one of these alert menus. By the way, I showed you these alert menus in these so many options, but of course there is nothing that prevents you from building a trivial alert menu that will simply say, like a problem. Here it will contain a message, and here it will simply say OK, right? That's a perfectly fine choice, right? It will have a title, it will have a message, and it will have a positive button. So that's easy to do. And I think that if I insert a name and I say, okay, there are two behaviors that should happen, okay? That if my name is unique, once I get a reply from the server, I should get essentially one of these toasts. The toasts are these very brief messages that are flashed that says, your username has been set, or maybe some prettier message that you can think about, okay? And if instead the username is not unique, it should tell you, I don't know what, okay, but something like a problem. Your username has already been chosen. Choose another one, okay? And when you say okay, it should throw you there again, okay? That's a flow. By the way, one of the things, maybe you're better than me at designing things, but one of the things that I've noticed is that if you design real apps, you will be spending an incredible amount of time deciding these small things about the flow in which you deal with the user, and you have no idea how much time people spend actually deciding the precise wording that you need to put in the various things. Okay, and I'm not super great at doing that either, but whatever. Okay, so essentially there is an amount of attention to details that, you know, when you use these things, they look obvious, but when you design them, it's far from obvious to get them right. So, okay, do something with value, and so send the value to server for send value to server, checking for uniqueness. How do I send a value to the server? Let's look below. I'm sorry that I need to do so much scrolling. But you see, I need to build another server connect, and let's execute a specification. Let me copy this code and adapt it, okay? I think people mostly code by copying and adapting. I build a server specification. I give a URL and set username, okay? So I get always the same prefix, but it will be set username, the URL. And then I have to give it to the parameters. And the parameters will be name is fine, in fact. And this will be value, right? So this is easy. You see, it pays off to have built this generic piece of code the other time. So this builds the parameters for the call, okay? And but it doesn't. So in a specification object, okay, that I defined, sorry, here, there is this use result. Okay, so sorry, I have to. Yeah, I made a mistake. I should not have instantiated a spec. I need to define my own subclass of spec that when it will get the result, will do the right thing. Okay? You remember the problem, right? The problem is essentially that in Java, functions are not first-order objects. So I cannot simply assign a function to do what to do next, as I could do in JavaScript. No? In Java, I really need to subclass the spec, defining the behavior of what do we do once we get to the server call back. Okay, so it's unfortunate, but I need to do it. So checking for username uniqueness. Okay, and we do class username set spec. So this is okay, and sorry, I forgot extends spec. Okay, and all we need here is to override, okay, public void use result string r, okay, and so I could go to the trouble of decoding JSON. In this case, it seems to be, well, I don't know. I mean, it's slight overkill, I guess. But on the other hand, on the server, I have this thing that is able to give me back any dictionary in JSON. So I will actually go to the trouble of really decoding JSON. Okay. So decodes the JSON. Okay. And do I already have the library JSON here? No. So I need to find a place where I have this library, by the way. Maybe I have it here. No. Oof, sorry. That's not the name, I have the impression. It's a more complicated name. I already made this mistake. Do you know what the name of the library is? No, neither do I. But you're using it in the homework. You should know. So, Google JSON. Okay, so I copy it from a place where it appears to 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 there. Okay, so next we need to define a class for downloading this response. I mean, for interpreting this response. Okay, so let me go where we are. We are in class chat source. So we are here, and I can define a new class. Okay, and I can call this new class like a get OK result, or simply OK result, I guess. Okay. And then there is a public string result. Okay, this is enough, I guess. That's all I need to do. So from here, JSON is equal to new JSON. Okay, this is sorry, can somebody help on how to create this? Is it written JSON? No. Why does the import not work? Can somebody help? We did this already so that it goes faster. Oh, no, no, it's because I haven't refreshed. That's simply the problem, okay? It's because I defined the new library, but it doesn't know yet that it's there. Yeah, that's the only problem. The JSON is not known. Yeah. Sorry. Where is it that I have to define these libraries? forgot. So let's see, back and forth used to work, okay? So let me look at what I did there. So we have it here. And if I go into properties, is it listed anywhere? Where? No. Sorry? Yeah, maybe it's not checked in this one, you mean, you say. Oh, here. So, sorry. Sorry? I need to import it, right? But why didn't I need to import it in the other? Why didn't I need to import it here? I'm sorry, this is a trivial thing that I'm getting stuck on, but I don't know exactly. I don't know if I just need to copy these because it cannot complete it. Let's try. Sorry? Yeah, but that's the other file, okay? That's not where we are. Yeah, that's the one that works. Let me try to add it here and see whether this solves the problem. No, you see, it does not want to resolve. Oh, I'm sorry. How am I one second. Let me just do the obvious thing in one moment. I'm at a loss. Okay. So here where it worked. I mean, you are doing this for the homework, right? So how do you do this? What did you have to do to get it to work? Sorry? And it is there. So to add it externally. Actually, Yeah, but it's very strange that I need to add it externally because it's. Now I have too many. Oh, now it finds it. Yeah, but now I have it imported too many times, right? I mean, at least I should delete this one. Strange. Sorry, but in this app instead it was not external. I don't think it's right to define it external. And now it also works.
That's the
Sorry?
that's the original version. So I'll have to-
Oh, I see. Sorry? No. This is. No, that is not what I did. No, it does. It doesn't want to work in any case. Okay, I don't know what to do with it. I, no, okay, so it does not know about that library. Okay, so I don't know what to do. You know, I need to continue the class with these, and then we will. I just want to be able to get it to run, I guess. Uh, I don't know what it is. I'm almost I'm at a complete loss. It might be an Eclipse bug, right? I mean, sometimes these things happen. I could exit and restart Eclipse. Sorry? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. These may or may not work, but it's the only recourse I have now because I don't know. I mean, I never had this problem before. Right? Otherwise, I'll have to chase it. Okay, so let's recap. When the thing comes back from the server, I have to check whether the content of the string is okay, right? If it's okay, I just set it, and if it's not okay, I need to show another dialog that shows the warning and then goes back to the other. So let's build these, and then it will work. Whether it will work, if it will work, but we will not. It's building the workspace still. Okay, very slow. Maybe you can still type. Yeah, I can still type. So let's. Um, so what's the name of my result class? So okay, result is equal to JSON. What's the name from JSON? Or I don't know whether this is right, okay? But essentially it will works in this way. Okay, I may have the syntax slightly wrong. From JSON? Yeah, because I lost the auto suggest there. But I have some deep problems because also for OK result it does not know. But OK result, I think I know the problem. Is that because I forgot? But you should have put this. Sorry, I lost track. Where were we? Just these. I don't get it. I'm sorry, but I'm doing something extremely silly, but I don't know what. Because OK result, it also cannot be found, but it's declared here. No, usually not, right? Sorry? Usually they're found automatically. You usually don't need to import files that belong to the same package and are declared as public. The classes are declared as public and they... I don't usually need to import these. Sorry? No, it is the right activity. Thank you. I was editing the wrong file. That is what was happening. Okay. So this is where I was writing all these. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I thought that... So this, is a principle. When the universe stops making sense, the error is in some other place. I tell you this anecdote, but for one of the errors I did, I was the first time using GCC ever on Linux. And I compile a program that contains 5 lines, and I get the following error message. Try value undefined. And I say, but I don't even have anything called value. So I know that the is undefined, but why should it matter since I never even mentioned anything called value? And I get this try, value. No, I never have anything called try. I get try, colon, value undefined. I know that I don't have anything called try, but why should it matter if things that I don't use are undefined? And the error was, try was the file name, value was the name of my variable, that was a stupid name, I admit, and value was undefined. So anyway, so I'm incredibly sorry. This is class chat, and I was editing instead, what is this? Class meet. I knew that okay, so now, so I need to do this. So this one I delete it. Okay, because it's an old copy that does not contain anything. Now, this one from here, I put it there. Okay. And let's see what happens now. I'm terribly sorry. Okay, now, let's close a bit of these main activities. So now, what do we have here? Okay, fine. Let's complete the imports of this one. Okay, now it finds the Google JSON. Fine, great. And now, here, okay, so this all works. Okay, fine. Okay, if, sorry, if result is, thank you for the suggestion. If result equals, I think we wanted the string okay. And then at this point we have toast to, we want to make a toast to acknowledge and store into settings. Have I already shown you how to do a toast? Yes. So then I don't do it, okay? Because I want to do it, I want to go on the new part faster. Else, we need to say that there is a problem, okay? So show that there is a problem. Okay, and here I need to build a dialog that essentially says that there is a problem. Okay, so I grab one of these codes that builds a dialog. This is too long, okay, but then I will chop it down to the part I actually need. Okay, so I copy this portion, I go down to my username set specification, and here I put that code in. Now this code becomes drastically simpler, okay? I again want to build a dialog. The build a dialog want to say problem. The username is already taken, okay? This is a really bad style. I should really define strings, and I should use the string ID over here, okay? But I'm just being fast, so I don't need any input field, so I don't do this. And I only need a positive button, so the negative button, well, the negative button is here, and I just remove it, okay? So, and the positive button will say okay. Now, when somebody says okay, what should I be doing? I should be, again, calling the set username menu, right? Because either you set your username or you cannot do anything. So, set username. Okay? So, so this should work. Last famous words, I guess, after all we had happening, but yeah. Okay, so there is only a problem, and it's a nasty problem that I need to fix. Okay, so the nasty problem is as follows. Actually, maybe it's not so terrible a problem, but what's happening is this: that I'm building this specification of what to do that I will send to this downloader task that will do it in the background. Okay, it will go in the background underwater as in my drawing. Then it will pop up and it will try to execute this. Okay, at this point. The problem is that it's not clear what this is. It certainly cannot be this class, right? It needs to be a reference to the activity. Okay? So what I'm not exactly sure whether this will work, but I can try, is this. Because I can always say get activity context, get application context. Okay? So this might work. The only way to know whether this would break is by trying, because essentially, whenever you need to create many elements of the UI that refer back to the application. Actually, the full stack of classes is this. There is a class called context, okay, and below there is your activity. So normally this refers to the activity, because normally you write things into the activity class as methods of the activity class, okay? But what you need is sometimes a context, sometimes really an activity. When you are using intents, you actually need an activity, but for most other things, a context is fine. I believe a context is fine there, and so you have this utility method called getApplicationContext that enables you, when you are deep down in some nested subclass, to refer to actually to this. Okay, so it's essentially goes up in the hierarchy and finds this context where it needs to find it. So this should work. Okay. Now, sorry, I didn't want to really click on history, but I want to show you what to do on the server side. I'm not sure I'm able to demonstrate how to load it up on Google App Engine and everything, but at least I want to build this method quickly. And in my application example, okay, I can use it in class example, for example. Or actually, no, let's do it in the right method that is going to be called. So here, I define this URL that is in class meet default. So here I put it in I don't want to create extra things, so I just put it into class example, okay? So when I go here in class example, in default, okay, so I need to create a table for usernames, right? That's how I can check whether they're unique. So db define table user user data, user info or user. I think actually user is fine as a name, but I just prefer to call it in some longer name, and field username. Okay, I think this is all I need. Now I define the logic that that goes with it. Okay. This is put and get that we defined the previous times. So now I define something else that is called def. How did I call it? Do you remember? Check username. It was this URL that I defined. Set username. Okay. Def set username, and here you see we have a list of parameters that we are sending up. Okay, so these are not user URL parameters; they are variables, and the thing is called name. and it will contain the value, okay? So on the other side, I write username is equal to request.vars.name. No, sorry, yeah, dot name. Okay, if un, so I can say result is equal to false, and then so if un is not none. So if you are requesting, if because I don't know that this field is going to be, this variable is going to be present, right? So now I'm checking essentially that this is present. I should have added in the request another thing. I should have added the secret, okay? So let me add it back here, the secret. I want to check this secret because I don't want people who have other apps to be able to reserve usernames in my system, okay? So this my secret was what? This string my secret. It was be happy, okay? Or like code straight, something like that would have been an appropriate name. But here I can say m.put, for example, secret, my secret, okay? So this work. Then I need to define private static final string secret. How did I call it? Secret? No. My secret. Hey, what is with auto-completion? Okay. So these matches. Okay. So now from the server side, I first of all, if this is not my secret, then I raise an error and I'm done with it. Sorry, this is the wrong method. I raise an error. Otherwise, I get to the UN. If UN is not none, then I say previous username is equal to db. So db user data dot username is equal to UN. Okay. Dot select dot first. So I look it up and I get the first element of the lookup, okay? And then I say result is equal to previous username is none, okay? So if I don't find any other username, then I'm okay. So now at this point I have the result, and I can say return dictionary of result is equal to R. Okay? Why do I call it this dictionary of result is equal to R? Because I'm again wiring up all the various pieces. So here in this class, okay, result, okay, the public string was called result. So that's what I'm wiring up on this side here, okay? Because I'm returning a dictionary, and this dictionary will be translated into the object that I'm decoding using JSON on the Android side, okay? So this is why I'm doing this sort of this thing here, okay? So this should actually work. The tables are correctly defined. Okay, so so I could, if I'm fast enough, wrong screen. I could upload this app now on the spot on or to Google App Engine. Okay, so this will make it available with this new method that I just put. We'll check again. Okay, so now the app is done, and but this still contains errors, okay? Because I probably need to wire up other things here. I'm just wondering whether I can fix them incredibly quickly, so to be able to demo it now. I am just afraid that it probably won't work. But this code, what is this code doing? I don't think we need it, right? I think I can just do this. Oh, but okay, but there is still a bit of a piece missing because I have now this username set specification, okay, and this thing here, this username set specification, sorry, this thing here, when you set the username, okay, um, okay, so essentially, when I give a task to the server, I don't want to give it a spec task because a spec task needs to be overridden. I mean, needs to be subclassed with something that defines actually what to do with the result you get. Okay, so now I'm getting a class that an object of a class that does the right thing with the result. Okay, I'm using these as my specification. I build it as usual. I create a downloader object, and I tell it to execute the specification. So this code might work. I could try it. I mean, I'm sure it will break somewhere, okay? But it's just the law of generalized bad luck, I guess. But we can try it nevertheless for the fun of it. What I don't like so much about this code is only this, that you see that the downloader object is now private to this very complicated thing. So this means that in the on-pause method, I cannot possibly tell the downloader to stop. I lost the handle to it, essentially. Okay, so this works fine, but the problem is that this downloader object will continue to live even when the on-pause method is executed, and that's not the intended behavior, right? We would want to stop it. Okay, so one of the things you need to do is that you need to keep track of these background jobs, and you need to cancel them via the, they have a cancel method available, these async tasks, and you need to cancel them in the on pause because you don't want otherwise to them going on in the background when you have already switched to other things. I think what might happen in this case is actually that they might trigger an error, because what would happen is that they continue trying to download. You may have switched it to something else. Then the piece of code that wants to build this dialogue to tell you about the problem or the toast tries to execute, right? And that will fail because there is no UI attached to be found anymore. So that will be the problem. It will just bomb, but hey. All right. Would be too beautiful. Oh, whatever. Fine. Oh no. Okay. How do I remove the thing? Oh, right. The OK button is there. Okay. So this died, and as we can then look in the log and see why it died. But it's I mean there may be a zillion reasons why this null pointer exception. And when this dies, you go look at on post execute. On the finish method, handle message. Okay, I don't know. I have to look a moment to find how it died. Okay, so but it's. I haven't looked. Okay, but my guess is that I cannot use at that point the get application context. Okay, because I'm in too funny a place to use that. I should have put into the specification for the task the context so that it can find it when it emerges. I don't know that this is my error, but I just bet that this might be the actual cause. Okay.